Kirt, welcome back to the podcast. It's great to have you here, and happy Pride Month.
Thank you very much. I'm so excited to be back.
I am too, because I have wanted a Kirt Graves audiobook of my very own for so long, and now I have an entire series.
Yes, you
because
do.
You are doing the Codename Winger books and bringing Theo Reese to life. I'm over the moon. As we're recording this in early June, you've actually recorded the first two books with Tracker Hacker and Schooled.
Right.
Which are working their way out into the world for everybody to get at their favorite audiobook location. You and I started talking about this series back in GRL 2019 in Albuquerque. What made this series interesting for you to take on as a project?
I mean, I think for any audiobook narrator, there are some things that you have to consider with every book that you're going to do. One of them is, of course, money. Like, are you going to earn out on it? And the other big one is this going to be an important part of your portfolio? So for me, this was just an important part of my portfolio as somebody who would like to be doing more YA. Not only who would like to be doing more YA, but who would like to see more queer young adult stories in the marketplace and would like to position myself to be somebody who's considered for those stories. And it's really exciting to see that there are a lot more queer young adult stories being published these days. And so for me, this is all about being able to say, hey, I've already done this number of queer YA stories. In fact, here's a whole series that I did, and being able to put that in front of the people who are influencers in my circles and be able to say, hey, I would like to do more of this type of work. And hopefully I did a good job with it. So go listen and then hire me for more stuff.
And those of you, if you can't hire him, review them highly so that he can get more work in this space.
Yes, that's also really important. I mean, it's completely self-serving, like, which, I hate to say it, but like a lot of the choices, for narrators, we are doing this as a business. All of us should be. And so you have to kind of consider the business angles. As much as I might want to do YA, if there wasn't a good reason for me to do it, I wouldn't push myself into that space. But it's very much a space I want to be in, and I want to see more of these stories published, and I want to be the voice of these stories as often as possible.
Now, when we talked about doing this during GRL, these were maybe going to be first, but you've done a couple other young adults with Jay Bell, specifically some of the work you did with like Conventionally Yours with Annabeth Albert, and some others in there too. What different things do you pull on yourself as you're working with younger characters versus the characters you might work with in some of the other 30 and 40-year-olds in romance?
I don't know that my take is that different. I think I actually have to do less work for YA just because I think it fits my voice better. My natural speaking voice, I think, lends itself to YA. That is something I have been told by the people I coach with as well. And so sometimes with adult romances and, especially some of those grisly, darker characters, you have to work a little harder to take on the character. Whereas with Theo and with some of the characters I've done for Jay and even the Conventionally Yours and the sequel that's coming out this summer, they skew much closer to my natural speaking voice, which actually makes the job a little bit more fun and enjoyable for me because I don't have to think so much about voice, and I get to think a lot more about character and emotion and what's happening in the story. So YA for me is a playground. I also think you get to take a few more risks, things that would seem silly in a romance, especially romances that aren't romantic comedies. You can be a little bolder with some of the choices you make for the side characters. Those people who pop in one scene and they say one thing, like, you can go a little bigger. You can make a bigger choice. And in YA, it makes much more sense than in a very serious romance. Because you don't want to take people out of like the romantic element by having a bartender come in and have a silly accent or something,
I feel like I gave you a fairly large cast as well. And I'm not thinking like Wolfsong levels of huge casts, but as I was preparing character sheets, even in book one, there's a lot of people floating around in there.
Yeah. Did you even realize how many people you had floating around in
I
there?
did not.
Right.
And I try to be conscious of where I can reuse characters just because I don't want to give the reader a lot either. But then there's like the one-off agents that show up occasionally, or the one-off police officer who wanders in here. And I can't put that somewhere else. There were instances across the series where people will pop up again.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm doing those character sheets. I'm like, I am so sorry.
Yeah, I was saying, and that's actually something that you did for me that is above and beyond. Not every author has done that, where you gave me every character who is in every book and where they show up, and if they show up more than once, and if they had any defining characteristics about their voice, which was super helpful. And I go back to that frequently as I'm recording, because it's like, okay, this person, I don't remember anything about this person. Is that because I've forgotten an important person? Or is it because, nope, they only show up the one time? Great. Give them a Russian accent or something like that, because it's like, okay, doesn't matter. They don't come back. This isn't like the big bad who shows up in the 11th hour and suddenly they have to make sense. Like, nope, this is just one-off person, which I think is totally true to the world that exists for Theo in Codename Winger, because he would be interacting with a lot of different agents, and depending on what case he's on, those people would either be there or not again. You even address that a little bit in book 2, that he gets to go and meet some people in person that usually he just knows by email or by codename.
Yeah.
So really, in his world, having people there who show up just the one time, it's not unusual. And I don't think it gives the reader or the listener any extra weight that they have to carry with them. I think they're just as willing as I am to say, like, okay, this is just a one-off person. Great. Moving on.
We will never hear from them again.
Right. We'll never hear from them again. And that's fine. You know? It's totally fine to have as many of those characters in a book as people want. Where it gets challenging is if those people become like really important, like 2 books later, and I didn't know about it in book 1. And then I make a silly choice, and then like 2 books later, it's like, okay, somehow have to make that silly voice make sense as the narrator of a book. But again, like all of those one-off characters, like that's where the fun comes in, because it's like, oh, I don't have to worry. Like this story exists in the real world. It is not a fantasy, so I can't go too nuts. But I also don't have to worry about those choices. They can be a little more upbeat or a little off the beaten path, and it works because it's YA and it's fun. The stories are fun, so I don't have to be afraid of being fun.
And so far, yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed.
Good.
And I suppose for people who are like, what the hell are they even talking about? I should talk a little bit about
We should talk about the book, yeah.
actually is. So the Codename Winger series across the 4 books is, we've got a high school hockey player who's a computer genius who has been working with his parents in a covert agency since he was 11. He hacked his parents' phones, figured out what they were doing, and the agency was impressed enough to have him come work in their IT department. In Tracker Hacker, we've got a situation where the agency's tracking system has been hacked by somebody. They've got agents disappearing. They're trying to plug the security leak. So Theo is very involved in that. And in pretty short order, his dad ends up as somebody who's gone off the grid and can't be found. And it forces him out into the field for the very first time with minimal training. But he's kind of the guy for them who can get in and take care of the situation, because also the secret lair happens to be under a hockey rink where he can go play in a tournament. You say some of it's rooted in the real world. To have your lair under a hockey rink, I don't know.
I mean, you created a character who is young, athletic, super genius, who's also emotionally intelligent and social enough to have friends and a boyfriend. I don't know that person exists in real life, but man, is he fun to hang out with on a page.
I'd like to think that maybe somewhere there is a Theo out in the world, who can tick all of those boxes. And what I like in my own story, but I gave those moments where it's like, how are you this person? In book 2, somebody actually is like, how do you write these crazy technical papers and do this stuff, but you're also this guy who plays hockey and you've got this boyfriend too. How is that possible? It just is for him.
With some struggles, which I also really enjoy about the story. It's not easy for him. Balancing all of that takes thoughtfulness, and he struggles with it.
And that's something that he will not lose through the series. Things escalate, and essentially each book amps up the stakes for him and what he has to accomplish, both as an agent and in some cases being just a kid. At school, the second book really sets him up for that, because his agency life and his school life collide here. as a secret file that he's been helping the agency search for that has been stolen actually ends up at the computer science competition where he is coaching and working with his school's team. And he has to somehow be Winger and be Theo at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
It tests him pretty thoroughly in what he can do, because even at the beginning, he's like, I don't know why I would work with this computer science team because I'm better than all of them.
Right.
But he learns a lot in that process in terms of leading people, working with people. And as Eddie, his boyfriend, very bluntly says, you don't have to be a dick about this.
Mm-hmm. Right. He also discovers like, oh, you're not the only smart kid in the school. Like there are other very capable people. Maybe they don't do it all like you do, but they have their niche and they're very good at it. Just to take the conversation back a little bit to like when you first started writing this series, where did you come up with the idea to have a super genius hockey player, gay guy with a boyfriend?
So it all comes back to GRL. In this case,
Okay.
GRL in Chicago in, I want to say 2015, maybe? Initially, I had just finished my very first trilogy, which was Young Adult, New Adult, trying to decide what I was going to do next. Was it going to be romance? Was it going to be more young adult? What did that look like? And I was talking with Z.A. Maxfield and talking with Claire London, and Will was there. We kind of had this idea of something around a secret agent, a young secret agent could be interesting. Somewhere else in this con, and I never figured out for sure if they were with GRL or somebody who was just staying at this hotel, but somebody on their phone had a Kim Possible ringtone. I adore Kim Possible. I love that show. I've watched it all. I've revisited it a few times on Disney Plus because they're all there. Kim being this high schooler who was responsible for saving the world, saving her town, doing big things, and also occasionally having that moment of like, gosh, I just wish I could go be with mom and dad and just not deal with this thing. She wouldn't have the secret identity thing going on, but it was very much the similar thing. By the time I left GRL that weekend, I had the prologue in my head and actually wrote it on the plane coming back. I mean, it changed a little bit as anything will from first draft to finish, but by and large, there was Theo for the first time on a page. Then it was a matter of like, how long would the series be and what would escalate across those books? And essentially the 4 books are a year in his life. That Tracker Hacker starts near the beginning of his junior year in high school. Book 2 takes place right after the holidays, and there's the in-between short story that is a little Christmas story, which again, it's very rooted in Kim Possible because one of my favorite episodes is their Christmas special, where there's like, can Kim get back in time to save the Possible family traditions? It's very much the same for Theo in that story. So book 3 takes place over summer break. And then book 4 kicks off shortly after he's back in school to start his senior year.
And you mapped all of that out from the beginning?
I did, because I knew I wanted interconnection between the books. And I wanted to very clearly see him grow from mission to mission as they became increasingly difficult for various reasons, because they all take place a little differently. So that first one, he had to go out into the field. That second one, the field kind of came to him. In the third one, it's not expected to be really a mission at all because he thinks he's going with his parents to help out some family friends who are just like, essentially, it looks like they're just being harassed a little bit, and they're going to try and fix that. But it becomes something much more nefarious going on that then ties a little bit back to book 1. And then in book 4, everything kind of blows apart with still tiebacks to books 3 and 1. There's some loose tiebacks to 2 in some places, especially with some characters, but the big arc of the big bad kind of goes between 1, 3, and 4.
So the technical elements that we have to talk about, I assume that must come from your real life job. That or you're doing a lot of research. Or you're just making shit up and I'm not techie enough to realize that you're saying nonsense, which could also be true.
It's a combination of all of the above. There's some of it that I at least understand some aspects of tech enough that I can tease out the research to either make it sort of rooted in enough reality that it works, or just enough outside of it that maybe there's a little alternative reality thing here. As far as I know, like the super cool contact lenses that he's using that are referenced at the end of book 2 and get used in book 3, I don't think those exist, or at least they didn't when I wrote the books, I don't think. But technology moves all the time, and it's essentially what Geordi ends up with towards the end of the Next Generation movies, where he's away from the visor and has his ocular implants at that point. These are just contact lenses. But we see stuff like that in movies, right? So I don't move things necessarily further than I think Q would come up with something in a Bond movie. Because those essentially are rooted now, and now you've just got the agency that has the super cool tech. Another big one to draw from was the Kingsman movies, especially the first one. So I try to keep it logical, but maybe with a little fantastical thrown in, because I want him to have that gadget. But I try to make it all something that can be done too. Like everything ties back to an iPhone for the most part.
Yeah.
Just super souped up iPhones.
For sure. Did you ever think about giving him a sidekick? Did Theo almost have his Ron to Kim Possible?
You know, I was so into the idea of having to keep him mostly isolated. So, you know, it couldn't become Eddie, or it couldn't become Mitch or somebody like that. Eddie's his boyfriend and Mitch is his like best friend and the guy he plays hockey with and stuff. In a lot of ways, if you were to give him a sidekick, it's probably John, who, you know, works with the family. And for a long time, he just thought he was Uncle John who took care of him until he really found out what was going on. And Lorenzo's kind of a sidekick too, in terms of being his agency counterpart and the one he works most directly with on most of the projects. But no, he didn't get to have a Ron, which is kind of a missed opportunity in some ways. But I think that would have made things wildly more complicated in letting him lead his mission in life a little bit.
Okay, that makes sense. I was just curious, since I knew Kim Possible was such an inspiration, if that was ever something you thought about having there for him.
I noodled on it for a little bit, but couldn't quite make that happen. I have to say, since we were talking about Lorenzo there for a little bit as Theo's boss, I love what you did with some of the characters where you didn't have to go on anything on the page. I mean, I describe what Lorenzo looks like, but there's nowhere that I talk about how he speaks. And you granted him an accent, which I adore.
I don't know. It's probably the same influence you and I talked about, which, you know, Q for James Bond is just this guy who's in the background talking tech. I was like, oh, it'd be so much fun. And there was a part of me, just, you know, his name being Lorenzo, I was like, oh, maybe he's Italian. But then his last name was Davenport, so I was like, maybe he'll be British. And so I just, you know, had fun. He had to be something, because he's too that's an example of a character who, like, if I had played it straight and just very, you know, boring tech guy, it would have been a missed opportunity. That's where in YA you can take a risk, you can make a bigger choice and have fun with it. And as he's peppered throughout the stories, it's such a fun time whenever he shows up now. I'm always like, oh, good. I get to do some Lorenzo. I get to do some Dr. Possible.
It works for him so well, and I like it when he is stressed because of how it tweaks how he speaks. And Theo's got the same thing. Theo's got an interesting kind of, you can tell when he's on edge or tell when he's upset because his voice takes on just the slightest hint of something else. Not over the top, because again, you're keeping it really grounded. But it's like, oh, that's just, it made me happy. I'm an author who listens to the books. I mean, not only do you need me to proof them, but I'm excited to proof them. I know there are some who just kind of get by with the minimal they can do because they don't want to hear their words. To me, it's exciting because it's in the same way that if it were a play or a movie, I'd be seeing the performance of it and I'm hearing your take on my story. Because there's different ways you could have done it that would have spun it a whole different way. But
Sure.
Yeah, Lorenzo's become a big favorite. And Theo's mom has just the slightest tinges of Elizabeth Bennet sometimes.
Sure.
Especially when she's truly in mom mode and concerned about Theo, that it's just like, oh, I have my little bit of Elizabeth right there.
Yeah. Well, you know, every narrator has their their bag of tricks and the sort of the mom and dad voice or something that have to come out every now and again. You try not to make them exactly the same, and I don't picture them the same in my head, but at some point there's going to be crossover because yeah, they're both moms. They both care about their kid.
Have there been scenes in these first two books that you have as favorites, either because of how they were voiced or just how they turned out or something like that?
I'm so bad at favorites. I kind of already said it, but like anytime Lorenzo shows up, I'm excited. Except for those when he was sad, I was like, come on now. Now I can't do my excited Lorenzo. But yeah, there was a good reason for him being sad. I was pretty excited when the Irish lady shows up.
Oh, that
Just
was such a.
because
I forgot I wrote her Irish,
yeah.
but and that's one that's written in the manuscript that she had that little Irish accent, and then it was there, and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. And I loved every time that she cussed because she
Yep.
cusses a lot. It was just wonderful.
I really enjoy every time it's just Theo and Eddie together. I like it both as a performer, but also just as like a gay guy. I was like, oh, I love that there's this book out there where there are two people who are in an established relationship. It's not a book about two people falling in love. Like they are in the relationship and they're dealing with it as teenagers, just like any other teenage couple would. I love the way Eddie is written. I love that he is so sensible and kind, but stands up for himself and will bring up the things that he wants in the relationship. So I love the two of them together. There are some times when I'm recording books when I just know I'm gonna have to really work for it. Most of these books, I don't have to work too hard. It's mostly just a series of like, well, what happens in this chapter? Oh yeah, these people talk. Okay, great. The only times I really dread it are when I'm saying the technical stuff because I'm like, oh God, I hope I'm saying this correctly. Because I was like, I don't know, do I emphasize this part of the sentence or this part of the sentence? I hope I'm guessing. I am not a computer genius. I hope I am understanding what this is saying and I am relaying it correctly, knowing that you will tell me if I get it wrong and that there's always a chance to fix it. So I don't stress too hard about anything. But mostly it's just a series of like, oh yeah, I get to do the mom again. I love doing the dad voice because it's just sort of that, who was it in Sky High? I think a lot of Sky High when I'm doing these books. I'm sure that was an inspiration for you as well. If you ever saw the movie,
Yeah, I like that
Hockey,
movie a lot. Yeah,
was it Kurt Russell was the dad in that movie?
I think so.
That's just kind of what's in my head as I'm going through this, thinking of actors that I know and like, and it's like, oh, okay, this will be fun to take on these characters again. So again, I failed at the assignment. I did not pick a single favorite thing. I just listed a bunch of stuff I like.
That's okay. I do like Theo and Eddie together. I've always liked those scenes because, again, they are that established character. You're not having to watch them fall in love, go through, whatever pushes and pulls they had to go through to get there. They're established. They talk about their future plans and things like that. I love the scenes where you get Theo and Eddie and Mitch and Iris together, especially their lighter scenes. There's some heavier stuff in book one that they have to deal with. But there's the scene at Christmas where they're doing Secret Santa and Eddie's doing his swim meet, but Theo and Mitch and Iris are up in the stands to cheer him on. And there's a great bit of banter between them as they're kind of oogling the swim team, but making Mitch really uncomfortable while they're doing it. Just those banter things are so fun to hear pop to life like that. But I'm really looking forward to 3 and 4 too, as the stakes continue to just amp for what you're going to end up and do there.
So you got me scared now about these last two books. I better gird myself, be ready to go through it emotionally.
So I loved watching you record live. For people who don't know, there are days, depending on the material that you're doing, that you're on Discord live doing the readings. Is it weird to have an audience for that? I mean, I know you're a performer anyway, like you do plays, you're involved in local theater, but is it weird to have people watch you do your thing in the booth?
Yeah, I hate it. It's my least favorite thing ever. But it's an accountability thing. It really does help me stay focused and stay on task. And, as the pandemic went on, that was like my toughest day-to-day issue is just like, how do I go and sit in this box and just read again? By month 15, it was like, oh my God, I've done nothing else in all this time. And so my impetus for doing it was simply like, well, if somebody's watching me, I got to do it. I can't take a 30-minute to 2-hour break when somebody's expecting me to come back to do another chapter. So I opened it up and was just like, I don't know if anybody's even going to watch, but just the idea that somebody might be there watching was enough to keep me going. And I had seen another narrator. His name is Travis Baldry. He does a lot of lit RPG narrations, and he does voices for video games and stuff like that. And he does that through Discord. I completely copied his whole setup. Like, his face is tiny in the screen, like he's not the feature, but it actually lets people see the book that I'm recording. Like, I have some artwork for the book and the name and the who wrote it, and then I have my recording screen. So people are seeing the sound files being created. And I was like, oh, that's so much less about me and more about the process. And that I was able to wrap my head around and do. I still hate it because I still just don't like doing live reads. I don't like people seeing behind the curtain because they know how often I mess up and have to stop and change things. I much prefer that people just think I sit down in the booth and produce a beautiful audiobook and there was no struggle or problem whatsoever. But that is, of course, not the way it goes. You have to stop, you have to rethink things, you have to go, oh, I didn't do that very well. Or like, oh yeah, this word, I looked this up. How do I say that? It's all a part of the process, and so people can kind of get a sneak peek. I've had a couple of authors now come into the Discord room while I'm recording their book, which is interesting. You and the other have both been very kind. It hasn't been a problem. In fact, on more than one occasion, I've been able to say, like, oh, actually, this part doesn't make any sense. Can you help me out?
We didn't have to do that while I was watching you, but I
No,
did
no,
watch.
I shouldn't say it didn't make sense, but it was just a time when I would change what I was saying on purpose, just because sometimes you put two words that rhyme in a sentence and you don't think about it when you're writing it down, especially if those two words don't look like they would rhyme, but they do actually. I remember there was one time when I was recording and the author was in the room watching and I was like, hey, can I just change it to this? And real time, she was able to be like, yes, that's fine. So it was like, okay, that's great. It has served its purpose and I don't hate it as much as I used to. I do like that it's advertising the books for the authors who I think deserve the attention. So when I can do it, I will. I can't always because sometimes I'm recording a book that hasn't come out yet, or sometimes I just haven't gotten the okay to do that recording. Most of the time, if it's an indie author, they're pretty enthused about the opportunity to preview the work for people. And it's not like anybody's showing up for every minute of every recording that they're getting a free audiobook in the process, because the folks usually pop in for 5 to 10 minutes, say hi, and then go off and do something else.
I had you in my ear for most of the morning that I listened to you. I think you did the first 12 chapters of Schooled or something like that, that first session. And I listened to most of that. I was just fascinated by it. And watching you manipulate the sound file and look at the spectrum analysis on it, since I do similar things for the podcast, it's like, ooh, this is kind of interesting, watching how this happens and how he backs up and redoes certain things. Mm-hmm. And frankly, that you do screw up. Because certainly Will and I in front of a microphone, even with the script in front of us, can't say the words right sometimes.
And those are the ones I catch in the moment. Sometimes I don't catch it. And then the proofer comes back with, you said this dumb. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I don't know where that came from, but, you fix it.
But it was also fascinating to me to watch you change voices on the fly. I mean, you'd go through whole big sections where you'd be popping between Theo and Eddie or Theo and Lorenzo and maybe somebody else. And I mean, I've seen you do live readings occasionally at GRL too, but to watch you in the booth just make the magic happen, it's like, that is so cool.
Good. And I hope that that's, educational or informative, at least for people who are watching. That's the craft. That's, convincingly moving between narrative and dialogue and all the different people who are talking in a chapter. And there are definitely some chapters that I will skip because I know they're going to be really difficult. I did a book this last week where it was almost like a bad joke. It's like a Russian, an Irish, and an Australian shifter all walk into an antique shop. And it's like, that was my day. Like, that chapter took like over an hour for like 10 minutes of finished recording audio because it was just so much to have to switch between all of those different accents. And so that's when I will turn the mic off, because it's like, you don't need to see this. But if I can sit in a story, especially, book 2, Schooled, I'm in it. I know the characters, I know the people. And that's a pretty smooth recording process, which people can come and watch if they want. Like
Yeah,
I said,
I wish I'd had.
I don't keep a specific schedule. You just kind of have to join my Discord server, and then I'll send out a message being like, "Hey, I'm doing it today."
Did
One
you
thing
wanted to
I'm
ask me?
curious about from you is like, so this is technically a re-release. The
Hmm.
books have been released before, and you had the opportunity to go back and look at the series again. And I'm curious what that experience was like for you, being an author who has more experience, who knows more about not only the writing side of things, but you and Will do a lot of research on the marketing and publicity side of being a writer. Like when you went back and looked at these with new eyes, what did you find? And did you change anything?
Very few things changed. We talked about changing the covers to maybe trying to make those a little more in market, but you still, I mean, I compare this the most to the Alex Rider books, and these can sit alongside those books pretty well.
I say I think the covers are great.
So we left that. I read through the stories all again to see if I wanted to change anything. I think I changed a few bits and pieces, but these were so tightly edited, and the developmental edit I had was so good. I still to this day can't thank Laura enough for what she did to make these books better. Then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to leave these alone. There are some things that I've gotten back that I have made significant changes to, especially stuff that's like early in my career, which is shockingly now like in its 11th year or something.
Mm.
And those I look at like, God, why did we ever publish that? But these I was proud of when they came out. They're not that old. Tracker Hacker's just celebrating its third birthday.
Really? Is it only that long?
Yeah, it came out in November of 2017. So I decided to let them be
Okay.
for the most part. I'm excited that the Christmas story is now bound into book one so that it sits in the timeline correctly, because it actually came out between books 2 and 3. And I'm like, hey, this actually belongs over here. It's next to this other thing. The only other thing I've been looking at is just how to make more of my universes connect overall. Really, for the most part, everything connects. I mean, in a broader sense, you know, Theo and tactical operational support exist in the same world that Caleb and Aaron exist in the hockey player's heart. And if I had made some of those choices earlier, I actually would have probably written Caleb into a book somewhere just as like a player that Theo liked.
Mm-hmm.
But those connections will happen later.
Cool.
The young adult, new adult series of Hat Trick still needs to come back out. And there's actually a crossover scene that I've written into that book that puts those characters on the ice at Christmas time with Theo.
Oh, cool.
And Eddie's in the audience. So that will help connect everything together kind of going forward when I finally get those back out, which probably won't be until 2022.
The shared universe.
Why not make one big happy
not?
family?
Why not? If Marvel has taught us anything,
one big MCU.
make everything a shared universe.
And then eventually the plan is that while Theo's story is essentially done in Netminder, I want to do adult romantic suspense using tactical operational support as like the backbone to that. So even when we're done in this series, characters that you know from this series will end up and be support characters in that series.
Very cool.
Someday down the line.
Someday. You know, we didn't talk about process or behind the scenes stuff at all, but like you and I are learning a lot along the way of putting these out as well, outside the traditional, like just going through ACX format for creating audiobooks. So I hope that people know to go to your website to buy the book.
That's a good point. While these are available widely through all the audiobook resources, or fingers crossed that book one is actually wide by the time this podcast episode comes out, because it's headed that way. You can actually come to my website at jeffadamswrites.com and click on the shop button, and then the books will be sitting there. as well, that you can get them at a lower price than you could through any other outlet, which is super exciting to be able to do that. As you said, that's an experiment that we're running together in the way that this is kind of getting released. So kind of exciting to take that on too, to see what that's like. Because then you could take it maybe to your other clients that you're working with.
Yeah.
Like, maybe we want to do this thing over here.
Oh, I know for sure. All the writers out there in writer land, they're looking for something that's not ACX that can still make them money. It's all about return on investment. And so for a lot of people, that means they're trapped in the Amazon ecosystem. So I'm excited for us to try something different and see if we can report good news to everybody else.
Fingers crossed. So yeah, everybody go buy them off my website if you are so inclined, because the BookFunnel app is really cool. Just a little commercial for the BookFunnel app. It's just as easy to read and listen to, whether it's an ebook or an audiobook, right there in that app as you would anywhere else. I've been very pleased with that functionality.
Very seamless. So yeah. And these will be in libraries too, which is really exciting, that if you yourself enjoyed the story and you know a young person in your life who doesn't have the cash in their back pocket to go buy an audiobook, like encourage them to go through their local library and find these stories.
Yeah, because they should all be out there as everything kind of rolls out widely, that anybody should be able to request it through their library, and hopefully they will want to pick it up and make it part of their catalog, so that the young people, as you noted, who don't necessarily buy things through Audible or some other outlet, can just pick it up for free. Yeah. So I really hope you do more YA outside of my own books. I mean, I love what you've done with J. Bell. I'm excited to know there's a Conventionally Yours sequel to come.
I think it comes out in July. It's recorded. It's done.
Oh, wow.
It's called Out of Character by Annabeth Albert.
Cool. Anything else you can tease us about that is on your docket to come out in the next few months?
I'm doing a few really cool series. A book that just came out, Nicole Knight wrote Revelations in the Fire and Brimstone series. So it's sort of like a reverse harem story, but because it's male, there's no reverse involved. But like the harem is like angels. It all exists in like the mythology of heaven and hell, which is really fun. Sort of towards the end of 2019, I kind of put out in the world, like, I'm loving these werewolves, but I would love to just kind of do some other realms of like fantasy and magic. And boy, did the universe deliver, because I have that series. I have another series. The first book is out. Broken Warrior was the first book in the Weaver's Circle series. So check that out. They're all going to be coming out like slowly but surely, these series that just kind of take some time to work their way through. And of course, the big exciting thing later this year is TJ Klune's Under the Whispering Door comes out in September. And I will be recording that this summer. So that'll be my debut in one of the big 5 audio houses for the publishers. So that comes out from Macmillan Audio on September 21st.
That is so exciting. I can't wait to hear that.
Yeah, it's exciting. And it's a beautiful story that in some ways is very much TJ Klune, and in other ways is like no other book I've ever read from him.
Well, Kirt, it has been wonderful talking to you, getting in a little bit more of your process around the Codename Ringer books. I'm so excited that you're bringing the series to life, and I look forward to everybody getting to hear them and really see what Theo's all about through your voice, because I think they'll really like it. Me too. I'm very excited to have this as a part of my portfolio now moving forward. It's a really good series. I hope you're really proud of the work that you did. Theo's a great character, and the stories are so much fun. So I'm really excited to be a part of it.